Hi everyone, this is myself, and I hope you all will be having a blessed life. So, today we'll be exploring the most interesting and cute topic, miniature painting. Do you love miniatures? Does your aesthetic sense arouses when you see something beautiful, unique? So let's talk about what's its main purpose. So, it is basically used by artists. Skill 3D printed models, often used in tabletop art games like Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, and Infinity, and for other game enthusiasts who are more eager in having the miniatures that represent their armies, heroes, and other creatures. So often these miniatures come unassembled and unpainted. So the artist is needed to build and paint them. And a huge plus is that it has a very curing effect on your mental health and emotional well-being. So it helps you in relieving the anxiety and stress. Interesting. So let's dive into the world of miniature painting.
Yay! Yay!
Now you all have your models ready, so let's start painting. So the rule number 1, or the most fundamental step of painting, is to prime your canvas, model, or any hard surface that you are going to paint with a primer. This is the most initial and crucial step of painting. The sustainability and longevity of your painting, the shelf life of your painting, depends on this factor, that how you prime your canvas or your model and how do you varnish it. These two steps are basically sealing your item. So you might be thinking, what is gesso or what is a primer? Gesso or primer is basically a pigment that seals your model and it prepares it for the painting process so that it enhances the paint adhesion to the model. The paint sticks well to the model and it stays there. In this particular context, I will be priming my model with a gesso, and we are trying to make sure that the layers are smooth and even. They are covering the whole model entirely with proper layering, and I'm trying to keep it slightly thin for a better control level. Before we start priming our model, we have to make sure that our model is very clean and dry. So first attempt to clean it and then dry it, then start painting over it. And another important step to keep in mind is that your brushes need to be very clean, because otherwise your paint will look muddy and the results will not be as awesome as we are expecting from our final outcome. I know this layer sometimes sound boring or intimidating for some people who are just trying, but this is a very important step, and this makes all your interesting effort that you are going to put after this stage, it makes all these efforts long lasting. Then you can keep your model as long as you want, without having your paint getting distorted with the passage of time, with seasoning and with the weathering and all other things. Otherwise, if we skip this step, the paint will start getting faded. Once you have applied your primer, then let it dry and Once you have applied your primer, then let it dry and start collecting your references from the real life pictures. So after priming, we collected the references. Earlier we primed the canvas or the model that we are painting. Now we are going to add a base coating. Why are we adding this? The reason we are adding it is it will create a good shade color. Base coating creates more depth and realism to the model and helps us in creating grayscale model in which we follow the pattern of shadows and highlights. So now we are adding a darker color layer on the model. Use thin layers for better control. This will add shadows to the recesses of the model and it will create an illusion of depth and realism. For this process, normally the washes and the shades they work best. So make sure that the paint is not very thick. These washes will settle well into the crevices of the model. And now things will be more clear that we have to make this model more colorful and a unique masterpiece. So select your brushes. Okay, here are the brushes I'm going to use. They are clean brushes and I've cleaned them with water and mild soap to maintain the quality and prevent color contamination. So this model is basically a grayscale model, which means that it has turned into a dark base, and now I'm going to add wet paint. Now, when the last wash layer is still wet, I am dry brushing the model with a bit of white on the brush, on a very small size brush. And I'm just dabbing the model in the way that a paint settle only on the highlights and in the crevices, the darker metallic tone that we had already painted set. As you can see, with each stroke, details of the model are being enhanced. Brushes settled into the crevices are emphasizing shadows, and the lighter paint that is added on a wet wash has turned into grey, and it is now predicting the highlights. This is normally a technique of grayscaling the canvas, which makes it easier for an artist to paint colors later on by showing the dark and light tones of a canvas or a model. And make sure that your brushes are clean. Regularly clean them with water to maintain the quality and prevent the color contamination. And let's move forward to the next step. So now our basic painting is being started. Make sure that your model is being painted in proper light so that you can see the minor tiny details clearly. First step was priming, then we applied a darker base coat, then we used a wet and wet technique to create shadows in a wet wash, which emphasized the depth and darker tones of the model, enhancing its details. That means base coating shading is done. So basically what we are doing now is we are adding fine details to the model. For this, we will actually gradually layer lighter metallic shades on gray surface, so most important areas with the lighter tones, so that we can add shadow later if it is needed. So in this case, I'm actually painting horses, the white horses. So I attempted to paint this first because it seemed tempting to me. As you can see, the more the details are being painted, the more interesting the model is becoming. And now a grayscale model is being turned into a beautiful thing for those who love art. I hope you all will be enjoying the class. So blending is a key. Blend the highlight color with the base color using smooth transitions. It actually requires some practice, but with the passage of time, if you invest your time and efforts into it, it will start giving you excellent results. So build up the highlights step by step. Blend the two colors. Again, make sure that your brushes are clean when you're using white. Don't use any other color brush with it except you want to blend two colors, as if maybe I will be adding some gray highlights just to create shadow. Okay, we need to consider the light source and highlighting the parts directly where the model will be facing the light. For those areas, use lighter color. Again, don't use too much paint at once on the model because using less paint gives you more control on your canvas or model. So as you can see, now I'm dry brushing. Dry brushing is also a technique in which we just rub the brush on the paint model. In that way, it only highlights the details that are more enhanced. So now it is getting clear what this model has. It has a miniature buggy with 4 horses. 2 people are sitting in the cab and 1 person Let's add more details. Now I am painting red color. Which looks so lovely and such a fun to paint. I'm highlighting the raised areas by adding colors into them. So highlight the edges, then blend two colors together by adding a smooth transition by layering them. Use random strokes to get more real life textures. Once your basic layer is done, like I had added the red layer already, the darker red tone, then I'm adding bright red over it for highlights with dry brush technique to add more texture and detail. It basically involves layering gradually adding lighter tones to specific areas. So in this way we are building highlights step by step. Make sure to use a good brush for the model, smaller brush for smaller areas and larger brush for larger areas. Paint one color at a time. Earlier I painted white and then now I'm adding red in all areas where red is needed, that colors don't get muddy. It looks so nice. Okay, now red is also done. Our horses are painted. Now red is being added to the strips. Hi everyone! Hi everyone, my name is Fatima Saif and I'm talking about this course in which I have focused on miniature painting. Okay, so in this step we are repeating the earlier step that we did in the first class. We are applying a darker layer into the model. It is basically a wash of well mixed black paint. This will be a base layer so that the pattern on this side of the model is get enhanced when we add brighter tone on it. This black wash that I'm adding right now will settle well into the darker creases. As you can see in the tires, it is settling well. So this paint will play the role of shadows, and when we will add brighter tone with dry brushing, like slightly rubbing the paint on the enhanced textures, that will give an element of depth. Now we are adding highlights with a bit brighter color, but there will be another stage in which we will be adding a much brighter color as a last layer. Now you can see how this works. The black layer, base layer that we added just a little while ago, it is giving an elegant of shadow, and now the dry brushing technique is enhancing the fine details in this pattern model. It is giving such a cool effect. Make sure to follow this step on your model and share it in the project manager details. I'm using a small brush for this technique with a very slight paint on the brush tip. I'm adding details by applying multiple strokes at a time with a very light pressure. Technique. Apply the lighter metallic tones on the darker base coat by emphasizing the shadows and creating more depth in the model. Don't use too much paint. Add the strokes one by one. Use a little bit of thick paint on spots where you think the light is striking, or the areas that you want it to be more prominent, and less paint on the areas. There I'm using again the same technique by adding darker base coat on the stairs. Then I'll add a lighter metallic tone, enhance the texture and fine details. This is basically an indentation technique. With this technique, we basically paint small irregular shapes on the surface. Size is not same for all places, so we vary the size and placement to make the final paint look to the model by using dry brushing techniques most of the time, which is using a very little paint on a small brush. Create a one-off paint simulation. We just add multiple strokes at a time. As the brush have very little paint value, so a little change occurs. The areas that you want to be considered as background, add lighter and darker tones, and then merge them together by adding different size and different direction of the stroke, so that they look more natural and realistic, and holding it a much more lighter tone as a third layer on the umbrella and the last border to get more defined look. Later, it is looking more interesting. Start adding outlines to the model to make it more interesting. Outlines are important because they make your model look more cleaner, sharper, more beautiful, and having more attractive value. So add outline to all the areas, but make sure that they are not very thick or very thin. As you can see, model painting is continued. I'm adding a base coat of black color as we did with the horses in carriage earlier. Then I'll be adding burnt umber as a highlight color. The brush has very little paint, then using Varnishing technique, add strokes to the wheel, give it a depth and add a layer of shadow and outlines with Varnishing technique. Make sure the brush has very little paint value so that all the beautiful work that we have done already will not get overpainted. As I said earlier that we will be using burnt umber as a highlight color. Make sure to enjoy the process, as the essence of this creative work is to get inspiration, so enjoy the process. So now I'm painting the seat of the driver. So what I did is I added a base coat of black. Once dried, then I added a layer of brown, and then a wash of black is applied as a last step. Which you can see the black wash has settled into the crevices that are printed on the seat, and the brown color is the color of chair. Now beautiful model is completed. Now we are adding color to the outfits of the passengers. One is painted yellow and one is painted blue. So I hope you all have enjoyed this class. Bye bye. Bye bye. So all our painting process is done. So now I'm focusing on varnishing. For varnish, I am using synthetic wood varnish that is used for metal surfaces. As this miniature is made out of metal, so I'm preferring to use this one. This varnish will seal all the beautiful work that we have done already, and it will make the lifespan of this miniature model increased. So it will also help in protecting it from fading out with the passage of time. Varnishing is a very important step. If you skip this, you will endanger the entire work that you have done on your miniature. As we have completed this whole miniature painting class, now I want to discuss some of the mistakes that most commonly artists make during this miniature painting process. I'm sharing my own personal experience that I have learned through painting miniatures. Point number one is that you should not get discouraged. We share our work, we share our techniques, inspire others. So you need to get inspired and you should try yourself. No matter how difficult it looks, it is always easier after you started. It's not difficult at all. It is very interesting, very stress relieving. So you should make a try. And second most important thing is that people don't clean their brushes. Normally, the new beginners don't clean their brushes, which make their paint muddy or they cause the color contamination. And you should prime your miniatures before you start painting. And as a last step, the most important step is that you should seal your miniature with some varnish. And while painting, you should not paint very thick because that also causes a lot of problem and gives a rough texture if the paint is too much thick. And in case of miniatures, we don't want any kind of extra textures except when it is needed. And especially you should not paint directly from the pots because directly it gets too much thicker, which can lead to over application and wastage. Okay, so final thing is that just use high quality materials, use high quality brushes, and use small brushes for small paintings and small details, and large brushes for large details. Prepare your models and just enjoy the process. Don't stress out while attempting to make everything perfect. Nothing can be perfect in all senses. So just make sure that the essence of all these activities is to get a good quality time, to be more creative, to get more fun, to keep experimenting. Kindly leave the review about the quality of the course and your experience. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Thank you for being a part of our journey.